Good morning, guys. Now today we're getting started on one of the parts of the build that I've been really keen to do since the start, and that is putting up my ceiling. Now to do this job, I've gone out and bought a series of 2.4 meter lengths of 12mm lining board, and we're just going to be screwing that directly into the ceiling battens, which I've already installed. However, before we put the ceiling on, we need to insulate. So for that, I'm going to be using Earthwall. This is the same product I used in my last build and it did a fantastic job there, so I'm keen to see how it does in a bigger van. Now the advantage of Earthwall is it's relatively cheap for the R rating that it provides. It's also pretty easy to get your hands on from Bunnings, as I found a couple other products I looked into had supply shortages due to. It's also going to add to the sound deadening in the van, will not catch on fire if any of my 12-volt messes up, and does not absorb water or moisture from the air, which is going to keep it from going moldy. So now the process for installing the insulation is pretty simple. I've gone through and tied a bunch of string under the ceiling buttons, so all we have to do is cut it to size and then we can start screwing in our lining board. Yeah, I reckon we got enough. So here's how the ceiling is looking, all insulated. Now we really want to get the ceiling up in the same day because all the fibers in this are pretty gross. Gets all over your arms and your mouth. So I've got the rest of the Arvo to try to smash this out and hopefully have this all sealed so we can keep using the van and not have itchy eyes and throat. My method for getting the ceiling panels on straight and looking relatively neat is going to be to mark the center point on all the battens. We'll be lining my first panel up with those marks, then hopefully the rest should just clip in and at the end look pretty symmetrical. To make sure this end runs straight, we're just going to ping a quick chalk line so all the boards finish at the same spot. Good enough. Alright, we got chalk on. So now to cut our right one to the right length, I'm just going to hold the board in line with the mark we just pinged, and then I'm going to take a mark at the back and we'll cut it to that size.
Yeah, you spot on there, bro.
Right on line. Good enough. So we've had a little trouble getting this end piece in line with the main plank. So what I've done is we're grabbing a level, marked that line straight to the back of the van so we have our end point, and then we're just going to be lining up the center groove with the center groove of the long piece, and hopefully that will end up with the back piece being straight as well. That looks great.
Yeah, you're good.
So this is another fun piece. We have to notch around that fan. I've got it cut to size up that way, and I've marked on the front where it lines up with those two boards. So now in order to notch out around it, I'm just going to be measuring off of here to the fan how far we have, and then give it a couple extra mil because the fan cap will cover the edges. I've got my two pieces with the notches for the vent fan here, and to make that cut, we're just going to be using a jigsaw, tracing that line. Unfortunately, this timber's really not that strong and I've snapped my piece just trying to cut it. So definitely not ideal, but I think we're going to continue cutting these pieces out. Well, that's the two most difficult pieces, and honestly I'm pretty happy with how that's come out. So at this point we now have a pretty clean line right down the middle. And that means for the next boards we put on, we'll have to drill some holes so my puck lights can sit through. So I'll just have to work out exactly where I want those puck lights to sit, drill those holes, and then we'll put them up like normal. Easy as. That's why they say measure twice, cut once. I had these the right way around, and then I wanted to use the center, so I flipped them. And now when I've gone to put them in the ceiling, I've measured off the back point instead of the front. So that's wasted two of my lengths. Thankfully we're using pine, so that's only going to cost me 16 bucks. But that does mean we're not going to have enough timber to complete the job today because Bunnings has already shut. Damn. So because I've done them both backwards, I can use the opposite piece to get that up. Happy accident there. Alright, we should be able to throw this piece up with no worries. So today we're going to be putting together the final detailed sections of the roof, and my plan for this is pretty simple. By using an offcut as a reference, I'm just going to be marking how much of this piece we have to take out for it to slide up on in there, and then once we've taken that out of the piece, I have to figure out the notching for this front section here. Shouldn't be too difficult, so let's get this ceiling finished. Here's my reference mark. To get it tight, it'd be sitting at about 3.5 centimeters, but we're gonna go to 4 to hopefully get it done in the one cut. And also because I've got about 2 centimeters of play here because the walls are gonna butt up hard into it. So now marking 4 centimeters in on the edge of this piece, I'm gonna be using my jigsaw to rip it down, and then we can see how that's fitting up in there. So to get the notching for this front piece, I'm just going to be using my contour gauge, lining up the end where my board's going to come to, and then that should give us a pretty good stencil that should hopefully just slide straight in there. It's actually a pretty easy notch to do because so much of that is open space behind it. So unfortunately I got a little bit confused as I was notching this piece out and I've done it the wrong way. Not a big deal. The other half of this line's a bit shorter, so I'll be able to cut this off and use this as my back piece, but I'm now going to have to remake this front. And with those final 2 panels installed, my ceiling is now done. This job honestly came together a lot easier than I thought it would, and it's all down to my pre-framing. So if you haven't seen my video for that, I recommend you go and check that out before starting this job yourself. But all in all, this is probably the most satisfied I've been with the build so far. I think once the ceiling goes on, it gives you the first taste of how your van's gonna look when it's all finished up. And I honestly could not be happier with how this came out. So now we begin the long and arduous process of filling all the screw holes. I've got my little container of sawdust here, so I'll be mixing it on this little offcut of wood, and then we're using a scraper just to put it in all the holes and cover up those screws. So we're just going to be doing a little bit at a time. Nice little bit of sawdust on my timber, and then mix in just a little bit of PVA glue. Just basically going to knead the PVA glue in there. You want something resembling cookie dough. So that there is about the consistency that we want. So now we just need to get a little bit of that on our scraper and fill in every hole that we've made with our screws. Alright, that's 8 holes down, 497 to go. With the screw holes filled, we now begin the process of sanding back all of the walls and the ceiling, which means I'm going to be putting some 120 grit sandpaper on my orbital sander, and to try to control the dust in here, I'm going to be connecting up the hose on my 18-volt vacuum cleaner to hopefully keep the air in this space breathable. Now that we have the ceiling all sanded down, the next step is going to be to seal it with some polyurethane varnish. For this, I'll be running with some Cabot's Cabothane Clear in a satin finish and applying it with a foam roller. The foam roller is a fast way to do a large surface area and also leaves a nice consistent finish without any brush marks. Now before we begin staining, I'm just going to apply a couple layers of painter's tape to protect my walls. That first coat's been left to dry overnight, so before we apply the second, we're just going to hit it with a quick sand down with 180 grit paper, just to take the roughness out of the grain and finish up with a smoother result. So there we go. That's the process I used to create the pine ceiling in my van. The end result, I think, came out absolutely fantastic, and to be honest with you, this ended up being one of the easiest jobs I've done for this build. If you found this video useful, leave a like to show your support for the channel. If you have anything you want me to clarify further or just want to chat van builds in general, drop a comment down below and we can do that there. And subscribe to follow along with the rest of my van build. As you can see, this thing is taking shape very nicely, and I'm keen to show you all how we got here. Thanks, guys.